developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity.
We know the air is unfit to breathe and our food is unfit to eat. As if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy.
Silence! The great and powerful Oz knows why you have come.
You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
You have meddled with the primal forces of nature.
Don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, or what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts.
And now, Reality Rants with Jason Bermas.
And who loves you? And who do you love?
Good morning, everybody. It is good to see you. It is Reality Rants. I am Jason Bermas. Jam-packed show for you today. Back off the road, and it feels good. It feels good to be home and in my own studio, in my own element, being able to control everything a little bit better. Although at this point, technology out there, as long as you have a really good internet connection, you can reach people everywhere and look pretty damn professional. I'm in a Deadpool shirt, I know. I mean, guys, I don't even have the pro lighting. Like, if you saw my road picture of the studio, which I posted on Twitter, you saw that basically what I did was I had like a little monitor here, my laptop, and then I have these little LCD monitors I take with me. I got them when this point-of-sale liquor store got rid of them. They were using these as kind of like pseudo monitors while they were doing point-of-sale stuff. It wasn't quite touchscreen yet. They wanted to get rid of them. USB 2, 720p, 60 hertz. I mean, the quality of the screen doesn't matter. It gets you your guest in the corner. And then a $15 TV I got at Salvation Army that I mounted on a mobile stand that you can get from between, $60 and $100 delivered to your house. Okay. The mobile stand part, that's kind of got to be there. But when I'm on the road, instead of that, usually I'll use the hotel's TV as another monitor. And that's how we reach people, right? Look, I get it. I'm a goofball. I know I am. I think that's part of the appeal, right? Like, I don't want to fake something. I don't mind suiting up. Like, I clean up okay. I shave the grizzle. I put on a suit or a suit jacket. I go to a wedding. I get an eyeball or two. Hey, wow, Bermas, shaping up over there. But at the same time, that's not how I live my life. I live my life in t-shirt and jeans, shorts and a tank top, a hoodie and jeans. That kind of lifestyle. That's what I like. Very comfortable in that. And the vast majority of us are as well. Why do we pretend otherwise? Why do we put on the mask all the time? So I try to not put on the mask as much as possible. And I think there's a time and a place, right? So let me give you a time and a place. If Jason Bermas were to run for office, it would be a jacket, maybe even a jacket and tie. Sure thing. I wouldn't go Vermin Supreme style where I put a boot on my head and I grew out a crazy beard, right? And I made it into a circus show. No, I'd be in it to win it. I'd take it seriously. And look, I'm no fan of mainstream politics. We all know how I feel about the left, right, false paradigm, conservative, liberal political system. Bottom line, guys, is you better suit up, okay? Because it's team human versus team predator class, team transhuman. That's the real paradigm we're under right now. Whether you like it or not, whether you're in this country or not, whether you believe in a deity or not, whether you care what other people believe or not. That's the real deal. So, not a big fan of that. But if I were to run for office and actually win, when I was sworn in, I'd also take it pretty damn seriously. Okay? And I wouldn't burst into laughter while being sworn to the Constitution. Now, if you followed me for a very long time, it's hard to buckle me down politically, but I always say this. Big fan of the Constitution. If you were to, like, say, Jason, what are you? I say, a constitutionalist. And let me tell you why. And if you watched my program last night, Mixed Martial Mindset, with John Fitch, we kind of had this discussion. You know, John Fitch said, never admit you're wrong. I said, bullshit. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I have humility. If I'm presented with other information that is counter to what I believed, it would be shameful of me not to admit I'm wrong. To err is human. I will not get everything right. Neither will you. None of us will. That's why we have to have conversations and present information and have discernment and humility. Part of the human experience. But, so you'd get a suited up Bermas. I'd be there for the Constitution. I like the Constitution because it's a perfectly imperfect document. It knew that it could be altered. You could have constitutional amendments, which were a good thing, especially in the state of the world back in the 1700s. Period. And we've gone well beyond that constitutional republic into a privatized techno-fascist, okay? It's more than a police state at this point. It's the executive within the executive. It's a continuity of government, military-industrial complex run system. That's what it is. And Katie Hobbs, who would not debate Kari Lake, who had crowds everywhere, was all over the media, was a beloved TV personality. Remember when they used to acknowledge the fact and even utilize the fact that you were a beloved TV personality to get you into politics? In fact, if you ran, no matter what side it was on, right, you usually won. Sonny Bono? Right? It wasn't a new phenomenon, Ronald Reagan. That was reality. But all of a sudden, that's over. It's done. Doesn't exist anymore. You know, so Kari Lake and Herschel Walker, they don't win their elections. They don't get their day in court, right? A judge just says, no. Nope. Sorry. So the first video I want to play is Katie Hobbs cackling and unable to control herself laughing as they swear her in to the Constitution. This is the cartoon we live in, folks.
That I will support the Constitution. Stop it, Bob.
Let me just stop it here. I discussed, I think last week, how unimpressive most of these people are. There used to at least be a facade. There is no facade. The mask has been pulled right off. It's a bureaucracy. These people are not intelligent. They are unimpressive. They do not have the eye of the tiger. This person doesn't even want to compete. They don't even want to compete. I mean, Fetterman is another great example of the cartoon. At least Fetterman stepped up to the plate to compete again with the TV star Dr. Oz, who didn't win his election. And look, anybody, you take a person off the street of Canada, not following the U.S. Pennsylvania election or Australia, watch that debate, and they'd be like, this is like a skit, right? This isn't real, is it? Actually, because of how big TV is, Dr. Oz's reach would sure to be there. It would even be South America. Like, everybody would know who Dr. Oz is. They honestly would think, like, is this SNL? Is Dr. Oz hosting SNL? Wipe the floor with the guy that could barely speak. The guy who could barely speak, he's in office. Katie Hobbs is cackling. She can't keep a straight face when pledging her oath to the Constitution. A lot of people back in the day might think that this is treasonous. And maybe Julian Assange, who's not from this country and couldn't commit treason or espionage against it, especially by publishing just the documents and editorializing zero. But nope, that's not the upside down we live in. Sorry. Coming up in about 20 minutes, I'm going to have Randy Ireland on. And a bunch of the more high-profile cases via January 6th, 3 years later, are now coming into fruition. They're starting. So hopefully he's going to have a good connection. We'll see. He's down at the courthouse. He's going to be reporting on this. And I think that this is really important. Why? You know, a lot of people, again, come down on me because, oh, Jason Bermas speaks at the Reawaken America tour. Oh, Jason Bermas on Red Voice Media. He's really gone right-wing. Nope. Sorry, guys. It's not right-wing to hold people accountable. It's not right-wing to say, look, we need a system that works for the people, not against it, in secret, via unaccountable, unconstitutional organizations like Homeland Security, fusion centers, and signature reduction. We need people saying that. Okay? We need people saying the same people are bringing in AI, automation, and transhumanism because they don't particularly like the rest of us. That also needs to be said, and it needs to be screamed. And if you believe the mainstream narratives out there about a guy like Randy, okay, who I didn't know who he was until I was actually on the tour, sitting down, very nice guy, okay, and he's a typical dude you'd meet from, like, New York. He's not calling for, some kind of ethno-nation or white nationalist message at all. And Enrique Tarrio, it's pretty inconvenient he's not a white guy. Just saying, for these narratives that are just thrown out there to divide us all. And I'll say it again. Couldn't care less what your race is. The human race, our species, under complete and total attack globally right now. Daily. Buckle up. Because 2023 is not going to be a soft year. It's not like anyone's taking a break, guys. Okay? Full throttle. And people better realize that. Okay? Now, I'm going to go back. We're going to finish up the Cackle monster. We're going to bring it back. These are the unimpressive people that they tell you are popular enough to win elections against wildly popular candidates, and then institute policies that are just beyond repulsive. And again, you got to play pretend. It's play pretend time with Katie Hobbs and the gang. So let's really crank it up so you can hear the cackle in real time, folks. We did it! Yeah, let's get those. We did it! It can't even go to court. In fact, let's sanction Carrie Lake.
I, Kathleen Marie Hobbs. I, Kathleen Marie Hobbs. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear. Do solemnly swear.
Dude, it's like a schoolgirl in high school that landed the big date to the winter formal and she can't believe it. Like, what is this?
That I will support the Constitution.
Stop it, That I will support the Constitution
of the United States.
of the United States
And the Constitution and laws
and the Constitution and laws
of the State of Arizona.
of the State of Arizona.
That I will bear true faith
That I will bear true faith
and allegiance to the
and
same.
allegiance to the same
and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of the office of governor according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Those are the enemies right there. Okay? And the only ability that person had was to sit back, relax, and allow the puppet masters to put her in office. Okay? So the next thing I want to do is I want to talk about other unimpressive people. Okay? I don't know who this person is. That's number one. And I know my great audience, someone is going to know who this academic is. But I get a lot of good tips over in the Twitter feed. That's why I still use it. I was using it before the Muskernuts. I'm using it after the Muskernuts. It's just like why we use YouTube right now. I need YouTube to bring you guys over to alternative platforms like Rumble, Rockfin. We also stream right there. redvoicemedia.com/Jason, uncensored second hour. That's going to come up. If you just want to continue listening, free over at Podbean every single day. And by the way, every 2 weeks, you get the video again. So really today, if you're just joining me, you're not premium, you didn't do the Podbean, you're still going to get 2 hours. You're still going to get 2 hours. If you can stand 2 hours of Bermas. That's up to you. That's your decision. Okay? So this guy right here is exactly the type of person that is okay with cutting the throat of humanity on the altar of this new Gaia, earth-based nature bullshit religion. Okay? And he says some interesting things here. Okay? I have no idea who this guy is. Again, I'm sure he is not a great dude, but these academics are out of it. They're over the top. They tell you the plan. So he tells you basically the Earth, 1 to 2 billion people, same number that Ted Turner's telling you. I think about 2 billion people is right. That was when we were like on the verge of 6, 7 billion, maybe 8. Where do the other 6 billion people go? Where do they get? Where's the dance, Ted? Oh, you don't intend on those people to be around. Oh, just a voluntary 1 or 2 child policy. Yeah, voluntary. They're always talking about voluntary, a multitude of kids themselves. Okay? So this professor says that, but he's like, you know what? With a smart dictatorship, but most dictatorships are stupid. No, they're ruthless. They're not stupid. They're ruthless, they're power hungry, and they're anti-human. They're authoritarian. That's what they are. But if we had a smart one, dictatorship, if we had smart authoritarianism, then we can have 8, 9 billion people on the planet. Well, thank you. Well, thank you, guy. So, again, I don't know who this is. Bermas Brigade, I'll actually, as I play it, I'm going to look to you over in the YouTube studio. If anybody does know who it is, you let me know. And without further ado, again, I mean, it's right in your face.
What it will be. But in one way or another, we are so far, globally, we are so far above the population and the consumption levels which can be supported by this planet that I know in one way or another it's going to come back down. So I don't hope to avoid that. I hope that it can occur in a civil way, and I mean civil in a special way, peaceful.
So I just want to preface this right now. This man is talking about the population of the Earth. This guy in his little chair, in his nice suit, okay, with his glasses on, and he says, I'm going to roll it back. He hopes he can't hope because he just knows it's going to happen. It's a foregone conclusion that our population is going to be devastated. Well, let's start there. And then he just hopes that it's peaceful. Okay? that it's in a civil tone.
What it will be. But in one way or another, we are so far, globally, we are so far above the population and the consumption levels which can be supported by this planet that I know in one way or another it's going to come back down. So I don't hope to avoid that. I hope that it can occur in a civil way, and I mean civil in a special way, peaceful. Peace doesn't mean that everybody's happy, but it means that conflict isn't solved through violence.
Wait, so I'm being told by the World Economic Forum I'm going to own nothing and be happy, but you're telling me that we can do the whole population reduction thing in a peaceful manner. Doesn't mean everybody's going to be happy. Isn't that a conflict, Mr. Academia? Does anybody know who this is, by chance?
Through force, but rather in other ways. And so that's what I hope for. That we can, I mean, the planet can support something like 1 billion people, maybe 2 billion, depending on how much liberty and how much material consumption you want to have.
So again, your liberty is always at risk. First of all, material consumption. Here's the funny thing. Throughout my generation, nothing was promoted more than material consumption. I was born into a time, the 80s, where it was all about money and power, power suits, right? And business and your briefcase and your car, right? That was the big thing. Everything was emulated as that. And then you were taught, you grew up, you wanted a certain brand of sneaker, you wanted a certain type of jean, more advertising than ever. And then they morphed that into pharmaceuticals. And now they're shaming you for all the materialism that never made you happy, putting you on those pharmaceuticals because of it, and telling you, we can't support the earth. 1 or 2 billion. 1 or 2 billion. And here he's going to go, we can up that to 8 or 9 if you want your life to be a total shithole. I mean, wow. Just, let's continue.
If you want more liberty and more consumption, you have to have fewer people. And conversely, you can have more people. I mean, we could even have 8 or 9 billion probably if we have a very strong dictatorship, which is smart. That's, unfortunately, you never have smart dictatorships. They're always stupid. So, but if you had a smart dictatorship and a low standard of living, you can have it. But we want to have freedom and we want to have a high sentence. So we're going to have 1 billion people.
So you know what? Again, here you go. He's like, the predator class wants to cut it down to about 1 billion. That's basically what I'm saying to you right now. If we had smart authoritarianism, everything, we could probably have 9 billion. But your life would be just total shambles. Well, that's why they want to bring you in the virtual verse, so you just euthanize yourself and you're tricked into believing that you can upload your consciousness. So, before Randy Ireland gets here, and we're going to be talking about January 6th, etc., I got some stories to go through. Someone said Dennis Meadows, by the way, in the chat. Let's see if that's correct. We'll do it live. Dennis Meadows. It's Dennis Meadows. I love my audience. The Bermas Brigade, big time shout out. Thank you for getting that. Let's find out. He's an American scientist. Let's see what Wikipedia has to say. Oh, he's the Limits of Growth guy. Remember when we actually played the Limits of Growth? Does that mean that I have Dennis Meadows in that video when we watched it as a younger man? And then Beyond the Limits? And of course, climate change, right? It's all here, man. Dennis Meadows, gross. Dennis Meadows, oh, he's on us, the Japan Prize. He's in the Earth Hall of Fame, everybody. He did it. Woo! The Earth Hall of Fame. He's Babe frickin' Ruth, this guy. Like, what is... Again, the cartoon nature of our reality. My goodness. Just too much. Too much. So, I want to talk NASA briefly. If you didn't catch last night's broadcast, I think you're missing out. I had a really good time with Fitch. Hour flew by. Okay. It's just out of control. So, the reality of NASA is they're behind this climate change agenda. They fund through black operations all sorts of goodies, cybernetics. They got their robot arms right here. They're telling you that they're giving out $57 million contracts to build roads on the moon. Give me a break. It's money laundering, folks. That's what that is. Okay. And then they tell you about low Earth orbit flight tests of inflatable decelerators and showcases heat shield technology. Okay, this is part of their nanosensors and weapon systems. They also tell you about their augmented reality and gaming engines. That's the real deal. Let's see. NASA also took familiar Earth technologies to use in outer space. The agency customized Amazon's Alexa digital voice assistant and Cisco's WebEx video software for testing on the unmanned Orion spacecraft. So, quantum research under that as well. They're normalizing the fact that they're using all of these technologies here to get you ready for what I believe will be a faked manned mission to the moon and eventually Mars. Rocket technology ain't taking you there. That is fiction sauce. That's exactly what that is. That's not Reality Town, USA. That's fiction sauce. All right? That's part of the theme park that we played yesterday on the broadcast. We need to understand that. It's goofy. So, I'm on the road. I'm having a conversation with my brother with about 4.5 hours to go. We actually talk for like an hour. It's always good to talk to my brother. And one of the things that comes up is just this, how absurd this Hunter Biden situation is and how these committees are going to go nowhere and they're going to have a limited scope of investigation. And yeah, you know, you're going to have your Rand Pauls or your Jim Jordans or your Ted Cruzes speaking some truth. But one of the things that the media continues to tell you is like there's just one Hunter Biden laptop. What are you talking about? Second Hunter Biden laptop holding evidence of international corruption seized in Ukraine, Giuliani associate claims. All right, this is back in 2020. And there's like 4 of these things. Can you imagine being so far gone with whatever you're up to and whatever you're into after being in the Biden family, old Joey B's corrupt house of cards? And by the way, can we get 100 thumbs up over on YouTube? Can we do it, Reality Rants crew? Can we do it, Bermas Brigade? We did Dennis Meadows, right? Dennis Monster. So, you know, there's up to 4 laptops or hard drives or whatever. We know we've only seen a fraction of what's actually on them. This guy's so far gone while he's doing all this stuff, somehow those laptops are getting into people's hands. Or, more than likely, that's probably not what happened. So let me explain to people what I think happened. I don't believe that Hunter Biden was dropping off these laptops all over the place or just leaving them places. I think what was actually happening is that people were hacking in to his laptop and basically cloning the hard drive. And once they clone the hard drive, they can just put it into another laptop. And perhaps it wasn't even Hunter Biden himself. It was somebody else who, like, that would be real spycraft. So I go in, I clone a hard drive full of goodies, or you've just been running this surveillance game where you're continually cloning the hard drive of that IP address, and you probably have it locked on through hardware in case of the use of a VPN. Let's be honest, that's not that tough to do. And at some point, you buy another laptop. Doesn't even have to be the same model necessarily, and you clone that drive on there, and then you drop it off to be repaired. and you look disheveled and you say you're this person, who knows? Right? So when we talk about a second and a third and a fourth, you're probably just looking at like 4 hard drives worth of material. And I don't necessarily think that Hunter Biden is the only guy that this is happening with, right? I think that it's much more widespread than that. But just an interesting conversation I was having. It looks like Randy Ireland is here, so we are going to admit him on the scene. We don't see or hear him yet, but hopefully we will in a moment. I'm not sure if you can see or hear me, but still can't see him. If I'd say, there we go. We got Randy coming up. All right. So now we are here. Randy Ireland is with us. He is down at the beginnings of the trials in D.C. almost 3 years later. Some of the more high-profile ones, Enrique Tarrio's, of course, being talked about in the media. Randy, tell us where you are and what you're doing right now.
Yes, I just walked into the Washington, D.C. District Courthouse. I'm in kind of like the outside of the cafeteria area. But I'm here at the D.C. court today to, as the Proud Boy trial resumes, I'll be in the courtroom covering that. You know, we've been here in D.C. since August 1st. I've been privileged to be here in D.C. with Nicole Reffitt, Mickey Whithoff, Ashley Babbitt's mom. So we do a vigil outside the D.C. jail every night from 7 p.m. to 9:30. But during the day, we also come into the courthouse here. Want to say hi to everybody? Hello. This is Nicole Reffitt.
Hi.
And so we cover, you know, we're here to support a lot of the J6 community, but with the Proud Boy trial, you know, it's being termed as a trial of the century. You know, a big reason for that is, you know, it's really going to be a huge platform for conservatism, patriotism, really versus the globalist agenda. And I think it's going to be a huge platform. I think there's going to be a lot of attention drawn to this particular trial just because of the notoriety of the Proud Boys. And it's going to be a huge opportunity to use the truth to kind of counter and expose a lot of the lies and hypocrisy of the left.
So let's start with what's going on right now in the courthouse. Okay, we're in the beginnings of this. We saw the media and what they did with the Stewart Rhodes and Oath Keepers trials. We did not see great outcomes, obviously, there via the injustice system. Where are we in these cases and trials? How long do you expect them to last? And if the charges are successfully prosecuted, how long are these people looking at in jail?
It's really hard to say, but, you know, overall, the one thing I will say is what we've seen time and time again in these courtrooms are the judges putting their thumbs on the scales of justice. I mean, we saw that throughout the Proud Boy trial. I mean, massive witness tampering. Anytime a defense wanted to call a witness, oftentimes they, within 24, 48 hours of the prosecution finding out, they get a knock on the door, they get a call from the DOJ, the FBI. In some cases, they're threatened with charges to try to prevent them from testifying. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I know firsthand in the first Oath Keeper trial, at least 8 or 9 people that were supposed to testify for the defense. And actually, I want to say at least 4 of them actually made it here to DC, was inside the courthouse, but the judge never allowed them to testify. So, you know, right now in the Proud Boy trial, we're undergoing the jury selection. And I mean, it's just utterly insane that some of these jurors are being qualified. I mean, on Friday, we had a BLM organizer, a lead BLM organizer that the judge qualified, which set off a frenzy in the courtroom. So, I mean, we see so many different things. I mean, not even to mention, we saw this in the Oath Keeper trial as well. At the last hour, massive discovery dumps. You know, why, you know, some of these trials should be continued, giving the defense time to go through some of this discovery. And we see this time and time again. It's just underhanded, politically driven shenanigans. And the judges are letting the prosecution, the DOJ, and the FBI get away with all this stuff. It's insane. It really is. And then when you throw in, every U.S. citizen has a right to a public trial. These trials here in D.C. in these courtrooms are not public at all. Many of them, people aren't even allowed to call in. It's utterly insane. I mean, the extent of the public nature of this, if I go in and witness, I can come outside of the courtroom after the fact and report it. But I mean, that's basically the extent that the vast majority of Americans will see of these trials. So, in terms of how long the Proud Boy trial is expected to last, it's hard to say. I think right now, the common probably about 6 weeks, 8 weeks, I would say. I mean, my gut instinct. I mean, if the trial goes along the lines of the jury selection process, it could even be up to 3 months.
I expect it to be as drawn out as possible. And just the fact that we are almost 3 years into the incident at, the Capitol, which has been obviously exploited by the media in this quote unquote insurrection narrative. And it's certainly one they continue to run with. The longer the headline lasts, the more beneficial for that machine. And unfortunately, in D.C., as you know, it is almost impossible to get a fair trial. The conviction rate in these type of cases is close to, if not 100%. Either you plea or in most cases, you are found guilty, which is, obviously important to note. I would imagine there's probably going to be a conviction in this case, at least in some of the counts, and there will be an appeals process. So what does that mean for those that are detained? Let's say we don't get basically an exoneration across the board, and finally, after this, people start going free. How much longer could these people be waiting in prison before they get a actually solid outcome in their trials?
It's very, very, very hard to say. I think coming up will be one of the first appeals, and it'll be very interesting to keep tabs on that. That would be Guy Reffitt's trial. He was the first one that went to a jury trial. The thing to understand, too, is those that take a plea deal, they basically waive the right to an appeal. Now, they can appeal the sentencing part of it, but they cannot appeal the conviction itself. So, barring something coming down from the Supreme Court, I think a lot of those, basically, or a pardon from the president, let's say, a lot of those convictions, basically, I think they're expected to have to serve that sentence. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you're absolutely right. Here in D.C., the chances are that you are going to get any kind of like a fair trial or a fair shake. It's almost next to impossible. But again, I mean, you mentioned like the longer that this drags on would be beneficial to the prosecution. I actually disagree. I personally think that the more that this draws on, it's more time that people will tune in, be exposed to the truth, and I think that'll actually hurt the prosecution's case. I mean, I'll give you a couple of examples, and I plan on publishing a couple of articles later this week about this. But as you know, I'm a former Proud Boy myself. I was president of a chapter in New York City, and I mean, there's so much lies and slander in the media. Number one, saying that the Proud Boys are anti-government, which you see in a number of mainstream sources. We're not. The Proud Boys is not, and I can say this categorically, not anti-government. We're pro-small government, and there's a huge distinction. And the other part is, a lot of lies out there in the media is that the Proud Boys use violence for political means. Bullshit. Any violence coming out of the Proud Boys is in defense of third parties, people unable to defend themselves. The biggest question about violence is who initiates it, who starts it. And it's almost always, the people on the left. So, there's some big lies that need to be uncovered. And I think And that's why I say, I mean, I think just by the mere notoriety of this particular case, you're going to see a lot more people tuning in. And I think it's going to be a huge opportunity across this country to really kind of pit two ideologies. What kind of America do we have? What kind of America do we, the people, want? Is it a constitutional republic, or is it a democracy like they say? You know, the fact of the matter is a democracy is mob rule. That's not what we were intended to be. We were intended to be a constitutional republic. And the difference is, in a constitutional republic, even the least of us has a voice in what goes on. Individual responsibility, individual freedom and liberty. That's what it's about. So I think those are the issues that are going to be taking center stage. And there's a huge opportunity to really, you know, set that stage and argue those points, even in a place like this. So I think there's a huge opportunity here.
Well, I do appreciate the optimism, and I would agree that I think it will awaken some people. I just hope that, despite the fact that you may have a majority of people that are looking at the information and obviously see through it, and I would say most of us in this country do. You know, I would say, obviously, we've been gaslit into believing that Joe Biden is the most popular president of all time with 81 million votes, or that he runs the country, right? We're in a cartoon. The idea that this guy is running anything on a day-to-day basis is absolutely absurd. However, we've seen more and more corruption, especially via our elections, which kind of kicked this off. I opened it up with Katie Hobbs literally bursting into laughter when supposedly swearing her allegiance to the Constitution that you just referenced. And like you said, we are a constitutional republic based in democratic principles, and the idea that you were voting for constituents inside of your state that represented you, that state that then could pass legislation that was separate from the federal government. You would have a choice in the matter, and it was not just mob rule where if 51% of the people said something, that it would come into law. In fact, the ratification of something like constitutional amendment will take 2/3 of the Senate. You know, these checks and balances were set into place, and people are so ignorant of them. Guys, that's 5th grade social studies, just so everybody knows. So how dare Randy, you and others be for 5th grade social studies, and that being taught to America's youth. How many trials are we looking at right now? And on top of that, you mentioned a pardon from the president. Obviously, the current administration, that would be beyond imagination land. It doesn't seem like the infrastructure has changed anywhere. We just talked about that midterm that was the red wave that wasn't. I know that we met up with each other a couple times and had discussions at the Reawaken America tour where I pretty much predicted that was going to be imagination land as well. Where are we on that? And like you said, outside of a presidential pardon, things could look grim, especially with the injustice system in D.C.
Well, I'll put it this way. I don't share entirely your grimness. There are a number of things that are out there. Number one, we did take control of the House. When the UNCENSORED committee released their report, on the heels of that, the GOP, there was 5 representatives that was conducting their own investigation, and they released their report. There's a lot of truth in that. A lot of truth that counters a lot of the UNCENSORED. More importantly, heavily involved in that was Jim Jordan, Troy Nehls. So there are a number of things that are happening. There are a number of things that are happening that I think you're going to start to see that once the Republican and GOP take Congress, more and more truth is going to be exposed. And the more truth that gets exposed and shown to the American people, I think you're going to find that hearts and minds are going to start changing in a very, very big way. The other part of it is, I'm not sure how much you may or may not have heard about the case that's on the docket of the Supreme Court, Brunson versus Adams. But this case, we've been running about a three week national campaign with organizations all across the country, asking every American who believes that this is a constitutional republic to write to the Supreme Court and express your support for this particular case. Ironically, the justices will be meeting in conference on January the 6th, on Friday, to decide whether to take up this case or not. This case, it doesn't call for election, or discarding an election. What it calls for is, on January 6th, when electoral votes were counted, over 100 congressional issues was raised, over 100 issues of fraud that occurred in the election. Now, what happened is when Congress reconvened after the events of January 6th, they took a vote, and they took a vote as to whether to investigate those allegations of fraud. The vast majority of Congress voted not to investigate. They have a constitutional duty under their oath to investigate those allegations. So what this case essentially does is calls for the immediate removal of 388 elected officials who subverted their oath to the Constitution, betrayed their oath to the Constitution, and do not deserve to be in office. So is it a moonshot? Sure. But the fact of the matter is, 4 Brunson brothers launched three cases that have been going through the courts. One of them now, and again, those three cases were pro se. They wrote it themselves as an American citizen. And one of them now sits on the docket of the Supreme Court. That's a moonshot in and of itself.
Let me just say this, because I am very well aware of it, and actually I've reported on it, and I made some commentary over the last week on it. Here's my thing. Very happy that they did that, right? I think it's absolutely a positive thing. I think that you're right. What you do want to have is not only a campaign of people writing into the Supreme Court to take the case, but to also utilize social media and even the platforms that are supposedly the enemy to not only spread the case, but some kind of a support hashtag and force the media to at least acknowledge that it exists. The problem is, in my mind, is, like you said, it's a moonshot to get it on the docket. I've said this, it's about a 1 in 10,000 chance that they're going to hear the case. And they're, to me, Randy, a 0% chance.
Let me just knock down that stat that you just gave.
All right.
Number one, this case is on the docket as a national security issue.
Okay.
That knocks that down to about 1 in 1,000. More importantly, you laugh.
I mean, Randy, my thing is this. Listen, I would love them to take this case, but let's say they do it, and I'm not hopeful, but like, hey, they get to the 1 in 10,000. I can't imagine. And one of the discussions I had with the person that was presenting this case is that basically all of these elected officials, their offices would be invalidated, right? Look, I get that we live in unprecedented times, but when I look at the history of the corruption in this country, the last time that we really saw high-level officials do any kind of jail time was Iran-Contra. You could argue Scooter Libby later got thrown to the wolves via the Enron scandal, but even Trump pardoned him. And isn't that the irony? Like, Trump will pardon that guy, but he'll leave your guys out to dry. It's a pretty disturbing place to rest.
Hold on.
All right.
How are you placing that at the feet of Trump? Well, Trump was only president until when? January 20th?
This is true,
but in 14 days he was going to pardon everybody?
Well, I understand he couldn't have pardoned everybody, but I think Trump failed on pardons via, obviously, somebody like Assange.
I mean, that's a different conversation.
I agree, but at the same time, he's not out there with your guys. Like, you're doing these vigils, and God bless you for it, and I think that's something that especially my audience in your area should be supportive of.
Listen, I'm not going to sit here and defend Trump. I have a lot of disagreements with Trump, but I will say Trump has called into the vigil. There is some growing support. I mean, there's a lot of politics behind the scenes. We keep on wanting to think that Trump's not a politician. Well, he is, and we're not all going to agree on everything he does. And I think that's part of it, though. But I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not going to defend the guy, but at the same time, I mean, to say that, there's no doubt in my mind that if he was to ever be back in office, that he would pardon the January 6th. There's no doubt in my mind. So.
See, I want to believe that too, Randy, but I don't necessarily. But I do appreciate the conversation. And basically, look, I think that we need a system of elections that are outside of voting machines that can be audited.
Absolutely. Totally agree.
That is at the crux of this entire issue. We have a media that is allowed to say things, and even when they get caught, the best you can do, like say as a Kyle Rittenhouse, is recover financially years and years later through lawfare. That's not enough.
Right.
when we're talking about these cases.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's, we need upheaval and we need change. And that's why I know it's a little bit of a pipe dream, certainly. I mean, it is a long shot. But I mean, think about what would happen if the Supreme Court did take up this case and removed 388 officials. I mean, the very corruption that you've talked about that has been allowed to swell across this country for decades, immediately you're doing something about it. That won't fix the justice system. I mean, we have a lot of activist judges that have been put in place. Trump even appointed some of them. We need, if we are to maintain and return or restore our constitutional republic, we need judges at every level to uphold and defend that Constitution at all costs. I mean, January 6th is a perfect example of how, for the federal government to get to a point where they can point their finger at any U.S. citizen, claim that they're a terrorist or this or that, and immediately use that as grounds for taking away their constitutionally protected rights. This is what I'm saying. I mean, I think we're quickly reaching a point that will be a flashpoint here in America. There is a war and an assault on our Constitution. And we, the people, need to decide, do we want freedoms? Do we want liberties? Do we want to maintain being a constitutional republic? Or are we going to go by the way of communism, globalism? Because that's really what it's all about. Well, and there's so much corruption up and down. You're absolutely right. It took decades for us to get here. I don't think it's going to be fixed overnight. But I think there's, it's going to reach a point at some point in time where there will be a flashpoint, I think. So.
Well, I think that's where everybody has to rally around you, and that's why I always talk about this really, to me, not being a right or left issue. When you're coming after somebody's freedom of speech, when you are criminalizing American citizens and taking away the Constitution, when you're empowering Homeland Security, the Justice Department, fusion centers, and programs like signature reduction, which are openly waging domestic warfare against our populace, and now creating this idea of not only narrative control but pre-crime and behavioral assessment. One of the steps in that is successful and powerful prosecutions against people like the ones that are about to be on trial right now. So tell people right now how they can support you, how they can get involved, where you're going to be covering this, and where they can find the latest information on it, Randy.
Yeah, this is, I am the founder of an organization called Americans for Justice. You can find us at www.a4justice.org. We're also on Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, A4Justice. So we're going to be, I'm going to be here in the courtroom reporting on what's going on in the Proud Boy trial specifically. And I'll be covering some of that through Twitter. We expect to be releasing 2 15-minute or so videos every day, one at the noon recess, one at the end of the court day. I'm going to be working with a team of individuals. But kind of going hand in hand with what you're talking about, I definitely think that we're at a point where for us to move the needle of justice in these, especially these January 6 cases, I personally don't believe it's going to happen in a criminal courtroom. I believe it's going to happen through constitutional lawyers going after these agencies and these agents who basically break the law to uphold the law. And, that's one of the things that we're really trying to do with Americans for Justice, is to unite Americans around the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and due process. So everything that we do is really focused with that core mission in mind. So thank you so much for having me.
Yo, Randy, I appreciate it. Obviously, we're going to be keeping up on this case. I look forward to not only interviewing you, but other people involved. I know that you've done great work and continue to do great work with Ashley Babbitt's mother. One more time, tell people about the vigil and how they can support you there as well, and where people can really give donations, because that case obviously was never really discussed in the mainstream media. There is no justice for Ashley Babbitt. And I can't imagine, being her mom out there. And shame on people even within the quote unquote alternative media that throw out, terrible Johnny nonsense in regards to that case. I mean, that happened, and, they've used disinformation and psyops to try to divide people when somebody was murdered in cold blood, an actual veteran, for what?
Yes.
Breaking a window?
Yes. No, I've had the immense privilege of standing out here with Mickey Whithoff. That's the thing. So she and I first came to D.C. back in August. We have a vigil that happens outside the D.C. jail every night from 7 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. Right now she's back in California taking care of some things. But everybody can follow her, can donate to her and donate to what we're doing here in D.C. By going to the website www.4Ashley, ASHLI.com. We have a call to action page there, things that people can get involved doing. We're on the doorstep on Friday is January 6th, the 2nd year anniversary. We are planning, Mickey will be here, and those of us, we will be outside the Supreme Court at 8 a.m. on Friday morning. And then at 1 p.m., we're going to be going over to the Capitol to give a tribute to Ashley and to those that lost their lives on January 6th. And then we will be back at the D.C. jail 7 p.m. For the nightly vigil there, the candlelight vigil. So I would invite anybody who can come on out and join us. We would love to have you stand with us, lend your voice. And those that can't, we will be live streaming every day. So you can find out information on that on the 4Ashley site or the Americans for Justice site.
All right, Randy, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, and we will be talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
You got it. There's Randy Ireland. And again, we're going to be following that Proud Boys case. We're going to be going to the other side, okay, of the broadcast over at redvoicemedia.com/Jason. Now, this one should be an interesting part of the broadcast because after we do a quick news blitz, what I'm going to do is page by page for an hour. We'll see how far we get down it. I'm going to go over the infamous Future Strategic Issues and Warfare NASA document, this one right here, which is the blueprint for what has gone on in the last 20 plus years since it was published in July of 2001. Okay, we're now 22 years, almost down the line, 21 and a half, if you want to get technical. All right. Look, this is it. I don't even know if we're going to get through all of it, especially the things that we're going to talk about. This is the deal. So I want you to thumbs it up if you're over on YouTube. I want you to come over to the alternative platforms like Rumble, like Rockfin, everybody that supports me there. Thank you so much. But we are going exclusively video-wise at redvoicemedia.com/Jason, uncensored, 100% all the time. Probably going to be talking about, some things maybe that you can't talk about so much. It's crazy to me that this happens and anybody that says it might be something is immediately attacked. All my years in sports, never seen anything like it. Doesn't matter. We're going to be talking about the return of the mandates in this country. Okay. Obviously that happened while we were live on air. John Fitch and I, people coming in, and yikes. You want to just listen to the broadcast live? You can do that right now as well at the infowarrior.podbean.com. You can also donate to the broadcast directly through the links below, including the Buy Me a Coffee. A lot of people have been doing that over the holiday season. I want to thank them for that because couldn't do it without you guys. And we're trying to expand the show and the network even further. Like I said, so many other great shows on the premium side of the broadcast, including Self-Defense Warrior with my good friend Pat Miletich, who I was going back and forth with last night. He and Jeffrey Wilson recently did a joint interview with Boone Cutler and Michael Flynn. My girlfriend, Alicia Powell, continuing to knock it out of the park. The latest with Tim Canova, all at redvoicemedia.com/uncensored. But again, sign up through redvoicemedia.com/Jason. This is where I am going to give the cue to the producers that we're going to go over to the second part of the broadcast. And remember, Rockfin, we're also posting the Making Sense of the Madness videos exclusively over there as well. So, One at a time. Let's see you later, Rockpin. I do love you. Thank you for the support. YouTube, it's time to go. Thumbs it up, subscribe, and share if you are new to the broadcast. Plenty of videos like